Hey there, we're here at Gen Con, and if you've ever been paying attention to even the little bit of nerd culture, you've probably have seen Funko Pops. These are a very popular collectible figure, which have now just exploded in popularity now. I mean, they have the copyright for almost every single product you can think of, Game of Thrones, Power Rangers, everything.
Roll for crits in there somewhere.
Not yet. We're working on
We're making the deals, yeah.
We have to pay them. Anyways, they have decided that they think they should enter the board game area too, but not just with figures of famous board game characters, which of course they already have, but they're going to actually make a board game series titled Funkoverse.
Yeah, this is a miniatures game, and it's going to have multiple different sets. All of them are standalone, or you can kind of combine, play with different boards, different characters, but each set is going to focus on a different license. So at the outset, we've got a Batman one, there's Rick and Morty, there's a Golden Girls set, Harry Potter. We got to play around with the Batman one in particular, but the way it works is you have these little Funko minis. They look like Funkos.
They're actually new size. If you collect them, they're between the mini ones and their big ones.
They're not an official existing one.
3 or 4 inches?
Yeah, you'll see the pictures. And, it is, if you're familiar with the miniatures game style, it is basically a light kind of version of that gameplay. You have a board. You can, on your turn, take your character, move them a certain number of spaces. You get 2 actions per turn. They can do something called challenge, which is basically your combat, where you roll dice and try to get a certain number of hits, and the other player gets to defend. If you get more hits than they defend, they knock over, and on their next turn they have to spend their turn standing back up again. And depending on the mode that you're playing, you may have different goals. So like we saw a capture the flag one.
That's right. Based on the basic premise that you set up, the basic mechanics, they sort of all work into the 4 modes that all the base sets that we mentioned will play with, so it's nothing unique to each set. We saw capture the flag, which the way the game works is pretty much there's 2 flags, and if you end your round next to it, you capture it to get more points. No matter what mode you play, knocking someone out completely or getting these sort of extra little nodes gets points, and of course first one to a certain score depending on number of players wins. However, we also have a King of the Hill mode, which is pretty much whoever has more people in there gets points the longer they control it. There's also a mode which is called Leaders, which is pretty much the really heavy combat one, where you design one of your Funkos as the leader, who, if knocked out, will give more points to opponents, but gets more points for knocking out other things. So it's pretty much just a whole all-out brawl.
Each of your minis has its own special abilities, too, and generally they're going to require specific tokens. And the way it works is kind of cool. Once you have used the token, it goes onto this cooldown sheet, and each round it's going to move down one until you get it back again. So you want to figure out, how long it's going to take. Certain abilities will put it longer on cooldown than others, but they're usually more or less character specific. Joker had a thing where he could drop mystery boxes that would stop people. There's also items as well. Harley Quinn, for instance, has a hammer, but you could take her hammer and give it to another character if you wanted, and it might help them too.
You could even see someone like one of the Golden Girls holding the Batarang or something, depending on how you really want to mix things up.
Yeah, you can mix and match them completely to your heart's content, although I don't believe they will be sold in sets mixed, but you can do whatever you want in your own time.
A couple other things we learned. While there will be sort of store semi-exclusives like to Target or something, they still will go to your local gaming store right away, so you're not like, oh, I have to go to Target if you got a local friendly game store, because they didn't want to keep things too out of the way for people they want people to be able to play the game.
Yeah, we talked to one of the designers, and he also said that any exclusives he wanted to keep, if they were really exclusive, like at a con or something, it would just be cosmetic only.
Right, because if you don't, the San Diego Comic-Con exclusives are a very common thing.
And Funko is I feel like they do that a lot.
Well, it's a collectible.
Yeah.
But they want to make sure this stays as a game. And other than that, you use the basic premise, they're all there, so you can easily mix and match. I don't think it seems too difficult. They said, they said all these characters are very unique in how they act, which makes sense. We'll have to see what happens when we get farther on, when there's 500 of them.
Right, when it's hero clicks levels.
But I mean, we've mentioned that with so many other things. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, so I mean, I am, to be honest, my expectations for this game were not high. I mean, I am not a huge fan of Funkos. I don't collect them, and they have a reputation definitely of being this kind of they're mass market, right? They're very popular, so this could have easily been something that was designed for very casual players. Funko smartly, I think, hired this team that also worked on some cool licensed games like the Jaws game that came out recently, and I think they actually did a really good job making this light miniatures game that is very accessible and very simple, but it is effective in the way it captures these licenses, and I think it is fun, and I think there will be enough strategy if you like these figures and collecting the different ones and figuring out which teams work well together.
Well, I think it's also fun because not only is it, well, one, they're making sure that you can get all the pieces, which, you know, as someone who's like a full collector when it comes to things like this, especially when it comes to games where there's mechanic differences, that means a lot. But the other thing is that they showed a lot of weird I mean, Golden Girls was one of them. And they even said they chose that specifically to be like, we're willing to go in weird places.
Yeah.
And it just, if you're the kind of person who likes games like the DC deck building game series or Legendary because you want to be like, or even the new Unmatched line, you know, you just want to be like, oh man, I really want to see Goku and Batman versus Spider-Man and Shrek. You know, I'm sure we're going to get see weird things like that.
I hope so.
But this is the kind of thing, and it's not too complicated either, because, and as you said, Funko is much more mainline nerdiness. I think this can be a very good bridge point, and it's not too complicated, because, I mean, some of those mini games can be really just so many rules. This is nice and simple and just a fun run around and beat them up.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't say if you're a hardcore X-Wing player or something like that, you probably won't be drawn to this, or HeroClix or what have you, but if you just are a more casual player, or you, like you said, you're just a fan of these properties or Funkos in general, you know, there is a game here that was pretty fun to mess around with. We'd only got a little taste of it. We'll see what all those other modes bring. But tell us what you think about Funkoverse in the comments. For more Gen Con content, like this video, subscribe to Roll for Crit, and follow us on all our social media platforms.
But if you really need more, you can visit our Patreon, where we'll be having a exclusive little Gen Con mini podcast to listen to.
And there's our contest running right now for the Keyforge Age of Ascension set. You can try to win. Find the link in the description down below.